our mission statement is to foster an interest, appreciation, and enjoyment of nature, and to promote the conservation of healthy natural ecosystems in the Nanaimo region.
Who the hell's talking?
No. It's all.
We had quite a few online places where you can find information about us. So on the web, we have naturenanaimo.ca. Then we have Instagram and Facebook accounts. We have a YouTube. So I don't know how this is going to work because we have some incompatibilities going on here. So normally we record the Zoom and then post it on YouTube, but I'm not sure that it's not gonna record anything for this. I'm sorry about that. And we have a general email account, info@naturenanaimo.ca. Just a few things about some of the things that some of us do anyway. So I'm just gonna summarize what happened with the Christmas bird count. So those of you who are birders know that this is an annual event where we count, or people go out and count within a specific area, which is for Nanaimo is centered on the what's it called, downtown, and then I think it's a 25-kilometer diameter area, and then there are small areas inside that. So my area was in South Nanaimo and South Wellington. So this year, the 2025 count, we got 116 species found in the 24-hour period that is called the count day, and which was December 28th. And we got an additional 4 species, including tundra swan, which had never been seen in Nanaimo at this time of year, or during the Christmas bird count, rather. So that was exciting. And 156 checklists were handed in, and those usually are handed in via eBird, which is a fantastic tool for doing this kind of stuff. So anyway, very successful. Luck with weather, which is always important. It can be miserable. Some of the upcoming events. Tomorrow is a day on Gabriola, and so you can join if you're a member, you can join by going over on the 9:20 a.m. ferry and return late in the afternoon. Who is leading that?
I'm reading it. You probably should have signed up by now.
Yeah, yeah, we do have, for all these events, we do have a sign-up system to make sure that we know who's going and so on and so forth. In March, between one of those dates, we have the Hornby Island Herring Festival, so people can go by themselves or join us. The Pacific Rim Whale Festival, March 14th to 21st. And the next monthly meeting will be March 19th. And that'll be about otters. So sea otters and river otters. So often people think that it's sea otters if they see the otter in the sea, but that's not always the case. So you can learn all about it. April, we have the Brand Festival in Parksville. May 1st, Tofino Shorebird Festival, which this year I think is a little reduced from in past years. I can't remember what the reason is, but anyway. And then as we come up with new ideas and so on, there'll be other outings will be presented. So I'm now going to hand over to Julia Roberts, who's going to talk about an initiative that we're trying to get going.
So how many of you have been to Harewood Plains in the spring when the flowers are out? Okay, well, about a third of you. I bet some of you love Harewood Plains when you see it like that. So Stefan and I have been on the Harewood Plains Working Group, and believe it or not, it's been about 3 years. This is a group that was pulled together by the Nanaimo and Area Land Trust, what we call NALT. And Harewood Plains is an absolutely gorgeous place and it needs to be protected. And what I've learned a lot from going to these meetings, and because NALT knows the game of acquiring land for protection. And Paul Chapman, who's the executive director, figures out, well, first of all, NALT is already working to raise money to buy Hamilton Marsh up by Qualicum. And then Paul, the executive director at NALT, figures the next piece of land that's going to come up and for interest is Cable Bay, because there's been a lot of people working on Save Cable Bay. So it's probably going to be a year or two at least before Harewood Plains reaches the top of the list of properties that we would fundraise for to buy. And so what I'm suggesting is that we form Friends of Harewood Plains. How does this work? At the computer?
No. No.
Well. Oh, there we are. So the sorts of things that the Friends of Harewood Plains might do would be public education, Facebook page, website, tours, broom removal, building support for a purchase similar to the Cable Bay effort, educating ATV clubs and other ATV users to reduce the damage that's happening up there to the plains. And we would need to liaise with Mosaic Forest Management and BC Hydro, because they're both up there, and with Nanaimo Parks, and of course with the Nanaimo, because they have a long tradition of use of the Harewood Plains, and there could be many other ideas. So all I want to say tonight is if you're interested in helping out with this, there is a sign-up sheet on the back table, and we'll see if we can pull a group of people together and get started. And if anybody's on Zoom, perhaps email info@Nature Nanaimo and they can pass your name on to me. So thank you very much.
Okay, so we're at the main event, so I'm just gonna briefly introduce our speaker. And, some of you may have read her bio already, but reading her bio makes you tired. It's one of these people who seems to do everything, and her day job is as a professor of she's an astrophysicist, and she earned a PhD from University of Cambridge, spent 3 years doing astronomy research at the European Southern Observatory in Chile before moving to the University of Victoria, where she's a Canada Research Chair since 2003. And she's internationally recognized for in the field of galaxy evolution. And she has numerous honors and awards, including the Rutherford Memorial Medal in Physics from the Royal Society of Canada. She's also an athlete and a world traveler, but having snorkeled all around the world, BC is her favorite place to go for a swim. She's published a book about snorkeling in this area, and I think you'll have it available if someone's interested in purchasing. And it's called the Snorkeling Adventures Around Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands, The Ultimate Guide. Which was the #1 bestseller on the BC book. So without, I think we have to switch computers here, but once that's done, so we'll flip over.
You and do you want this for the photo? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, wow, it's great to see so many people here tonight. I want to start by telling you a bit of a story about how I got here. Now, why for the slides suddenly disappeared? Back. No. Okay. As you heard in Stefan's kind introduction, and as you can probably tell by my accent, I am not originally from these parts. I hail from the UK, and I moved here in 2003 to take up a position at the University of Victoria. And I want to tell you about the very first week I spent in Victoria in 2003. It was in August, and it was beautiful, sunny, classic Southern Vancouver Island day. And my husband and I, we borrowed a couple of bikes, and we went for a lovely bike ride along the coastline in Victoria. And after maybe an hour or so of riding, we're pretty warm, and we end up at a lovely sandy beach, and we think, we'll go for a swim. Warm, sunny day. So we start to take off our layers, and I don't think I noticed at the time that no one else was in the water. And as I think we were sort of running Baywatch style down to the ocean, this sort of thought probably occurred to me, why is no one else swimming on this warm, sunny day? And of course, the instant that my toes hit the water, I realized why. And of course, you know that the water here is extremely cold, even in the summertime. So the sort of British bravado in us dictated we had to stay in for at least a minute. So everybody else stared at us thinking these crazy foreigners. So I was really shocked to discover how cold the waters were here. And I think if you had told me then that the ocean and being in the ocean was going to be such an important part of my life, I would have laughed you off the beach there and then. Okay, now fast forward to March 2019. I'm sure we all remember it well. All of those plans we had to cancel as we couldn't move barely even around the island, certainly not overseas. And Stefan said in his introduction, my family and I love to travel, and we had many travel plans that year, but COVID had other plans for us. And so we very quickly realized we had to come up with other ways to have our adventures because we weren't trekking off around the world. We had since those early moments in 2003 tried to snorkel in these cold waters, but we just couldn't figure out how to stay warm. You know, despite attempts at wearing thick surfing wetsuits, we were always too cold. But we had at least had a glimpse of some of the things that are in our waters. And so this became my COVID project. was how to snorkel around Vancouver Island. So I did what anybody does when they are embarking on a new project. I turned to my best friend Google and tried to figure out, how was I going to stay warm? Where should I go to see the cool stuff around the island? And what were all of these strange things that I was seeing in tide pools anyway? And I found that there were very, very few resources online to help answer these questions. And so I took it upon myself to figure all of this out. And as the scientist I am, I kept very detailed logs of everywhere I went, everything I saw. And one day my husband turned to me and was like, that's a book. And so this is how this book came about. And now, despite my day job of being an astrophysicist, I find myself almost a semi-professional snorkeler. So here I am. That's the story of how I got here. And what I want to share with you tonight are the answers to these three questions. So these were the three questions that I had when I started snorkeling. And they're the three questions that I get asked a lot. And they were the three questions that I set out to answer for other people in my book, so that whenever anyone else wants to try snorkeling around Vancouver Island, they will know what to do. Okay, so the first question, what will I see? So our waters are extremely rich and diverse in marine life. We are all here amateur naturalists, I think, and so we all know the importance of having a good field guide. So these are two of my favorites. There are many, many options out there, but I like these two because they really span the sort of range of field guides that you might want. So on the left, Whelks to Whales. This is a fantastic kind of pocket-sized field guide that you could have in the glove compartment of your car, in your backpack, you carry it around whilst you're tide pooling, and it has a sampling of everything from fish to seaweed and everything in between, as the title says, Whelks to Whales. On the right, Marine Life of the Pacific Northwest. This, on the other hand, is a brick. You could use this thing as a doorstop. It's sort of yay thick, it's a big hardback book, and it has every species pretty much that you see around here. Is the Bible if you want to go all in with your species identification. So those are my sort of top tips, but I'm going to take you through some of the highlights of things that you can see whilst you're snorkeling. So both in the intertidal and the shallow subtidal. So I spend most of my time in the top 5 meters or so. So everything that you see tonight, these are all photos that I have taken while snorkeling around Vancouver Island. So there's no scuba diving here. This is all stuff that you too can see just by putting a mask on your face. All right, so we're going to start off with sea anemones. Now, we have many, many species of sea anemones. I can't take you through them all. I'm going to take you through just some of maybe the more common ones, and then also some of my personal favorites. So we're going to start off with the plumose anemones. There are actually 2 main kinds of plumose anemones, and they kind of do what they say on the tin. So on the left, you have the short plumose anemones. So they are quite sort of feathery in their tentacles, and you see these even in tide pools. You don't have to go deep to see these. Most commonly they are white, but sometimes you also see them in this lovely kind of peachy color on the left. And then there is the giant plumose anemone, and so as the name implies, this is a much bigger animal. I took this particular photo on the right, very close to here in Nanaimo Bay, and these things are really can grow quite big. These particular individuals were a good 2 feet tall. Yeah. They look like giant white broccolis. They're usually white, but in the Nanaimo Bay area, I often see them in this sort of more tan orange color as well. So I like this particular picture because you've got, one of each color growing side by side. These are generally more common in high current areas, which is true of most anemones, but you do have them here in your localities. Here is another very common species. You'll also see this one tide pooling. The painted anemone likes to be in rock crevices in high surf and surge areas. It's also sometimes called the Christmas anemone. You can see in the lower right picture, the red and the green coloration, hence the Christmas anemone name. But painted anemone, they come in all sorts of different colors. This top right one is a good example of some of the different color variations, everything from tan to green to red. But really the trick for identifying these is, despite all of this coloration, the tentacles always have banded colors on them. So I don't have a pointer, unfortunately, but you can see the pink bands on this one, the red and the green bands on this one. Often confused with this species, which is the rose anemone, but the rose anemone doesn't have that color banding. And the rose anemone comes really just in two main colors. It always has this dark red column to it. And then the tentacles and the crown are either sort of red and green or a pale white. Now, I'm using really just the common names tonight rather than the scientific names. It's easier for us to remember, easier for me to pronounce. But the downside with common names is there's often more than one. So the alternative common name for the rose anemone is the fish-eating anemone, because it is true that, so all anemones are carnivorous. And this is quite a large species, so the crowns can grow almost a foot across, the big ones. And so they can devour entire fish. They have, of course, the stinging cells in their tentacles that sting the prey. The exception is that for this particular species of anemone, the painted greenling seems to be immune to the sting. So sometimes it hides under the tentacles of the anemone to take protection from the presence of the anemone. As an underwater photographer, one of my favorite things to take pictures of are anemone mouth parts. So you can see here in the lower right, the jaws, if you will, of this anemone. It always seems almost like science fiction, these big jaws. And I love to just kind of put little tasty tidbits in and watch it gobble them up. So these first few species that we've looked at, they are all trunked anemones, so they have a pollen. But many species of anemones like to burrow into a substrate. So one example here is the stubby rose anemone. I saw several of these today, so I took advantage of being up here in Nanaimo for the day, and I snorkeled at Moorcroft Regional Park. Yeah. And there's a nice sort of shallow, sandy area where you get into the beach, and there are quite a lot of these stubby rose anemones. So they bury into sort of sand and shingle. And again, they come in a few different colors. These are the more common types. So they have quite short tentacles. They're very flat to the ground.
Excuse me, could Lisa turn off her video feed, please?
A friend of mine is the so-called moonglow anemone. So I think this is a wonderful name. It's very evocative. But the moonglow anemone really lives up to its name because it truly has this luminous quality to it. The most common color that I see is this kind of tan color, but also you'll see these green ones. So when you see a green anemone, very often, depending on the species, the green pigment is not natural to the animal. It's there because there are symbiotic algae living inside the anemone. They give it the green color. And so the photosynthesis that the algae are producing is then a secondary energy food source for the anemone. And then very, very rarely these moonglows in these more kind of cycles, like the one in the top right. But the most common type of green anemone, you don't see it so much here in the Strait of Georgia, but if you're on the west coast of Vancouver Island, you'll see this one a lot. This one doesn't come in other color variations. The green surf anemone is always green. Again, it's one of the larger species. The crown can go again up to almost a foot across. And I once read of these eating entire seagulls because they can be so big. And again, they have the stinging cells in their tentacles. And then the last anemone I want to share with you is this beauty, the brooding anemone. This is quite a small species. They're usually only about this tall. They will sometimes live on rocks, often on kelp blades. But what is really special about this anemone is the very particular way that it reproduces. So the mother anemone, she actually fertilizes her eggs inside her mouth. So the top part here that you can see here, that's the mouth of the anemone. So she is incubating her young inside her mouth. And then when they are ready to leave the nest, as it were, there are several hundred of these baby anemones that then come out of her mouth. And they first of all stick on the column. So all of the structure that you can see on the column, these are hundreds and hundreds of babies that are using this as a temporary nursery site. And so they will spend some number of days there before they then all kind of crawl off and go their own way. So I always love it when I catch these brooding anemones at this special time when they have their young in their nurseries. All right, now we're going to move on to sea stars. So again, we have too many species of sea stars for me to go through all of them. We have about 30 different species of sea stars. So again, I'll go through some of the more common ones, some of the more unusual, but also some of my favorite ones. So this is probably one of the most common sea stars that you will see here in the intertidal. If you've been to any rocky beach on Vancouver Island, you have probably seen the ochre star. Down in Victoria, almost all ochre stars are purple. As you move to the west coast, then they are almost always orange. And around here in Nanaimo, I find pink ones as well. So they come in these three main colours, and it seems to depend where on the island you are, which is the primary colour that you see. So I wanted to show you this photo on the right of this sea star up on its tippy toes. So sometimes I see this when I'm snorkeling. You won't see this if you're tide pooling, that they only do this when they're fully underwater. So this is not a bit of sea star downward dog. This sea star is getting ready to spawn. So the way that sea stars reproduce is that they broadcast the eggs and the sperm into the water column, and the fertilization happens in the water column. So when you see them standing up like this, they're getting ready to release the eggs and the sperm. They come out in sort of clouds. It looks like smoke almost coming out from under their armpits. So whenever I see one like this, I always hang around for a bit to see if I get to see it spawning. The other very common one that's often confused with the ochre star is the mottled star. So I just want to take a moment to kind of point out the differences between these species. So the mottled star again comes in lots of different colors. Orange is very common, brown is very common, blue less so, but occasionally I see it. The way to tell the difference between the mottled star and the ochre star, so you can see they both have like white spots on, which the same is true for the ochre star. But the ochre star, those white spots are almost like spines. They're raised up from the skin, whereas the mottled stars are much flatter and smoother. And also the mottled star, the ratio of the arm length to the body size is much longer. So you can see the legs are much finer, whereas the ochre stars are a bit more squat and compact. So that's how you can tell the difference. Another pair of species that often get confused, which really shouldn't, are these two. So on the left, you have a leather star. This is extremely common. I see this every time I snorkel. My fun fact about the leather star is that if you stroke it, allegedly, it smells of garlic. I have never tested this because I was got a mask on my face, so I can't stroke it and sniff it, but allegedly the leather star smells of garlic. And unlike many of the species I've already shown you, it only comes in one color pattern. It always looks like it does on the left, right? This sort of salmony orange color on a beige background. And you'll see this all around the island, very, very common. On the right is the bat star. So you can see where the confusion comes there. Similar size, there's similar kind of morphology in the sense they have this webbing between the arms. But the bat star is usually a solid color. It's usually either solid gray or solid orange. Sometimes it's a bit speckled, but it never looks like the leather star. But the other giveaway is you will, I'm going to say never, and then someone's going to prove me wrong, but I have never seen a bat star anywhere but the outer western coast of Vancouver Island. So basically, let's say Banfield and further north. So I never see bat stars in Victoria. I never see bat stars here. I never see bat stars in sea. You have to be out on the west coast. So it's always a treat to go snorkeling in Ucluelet, for example, or around Banfield and get my bat star fix. Okay, next up is the cushion star. The cushion star is one of my favorites. It's so cute. It's kind of pudgy and puffy. It looks like a sea star, kind of plushie that you might want to cuddle up to. But you really would not want to cuddle up with a cushion star because the alternative common name is the slime star. So if you try to pick up or even touch a cushion star, it will ooze copious amounts of mucus as a defense mechanism. So I like to call it the cushion star, but slime star is also very descriptive. Now, all of the sea stars that I've shown you so far have all got 5 arms, but that is not always the case. Sometimes they have more than 5 arms. So here's an example of a sea star that is exhibiting more than 5 arms. So this is the giant pink star. Again, I often see these around Nanaimo, and as the name implies, they are big and they are pink. They normally have 5 arms, but this photo is giving me the opportunity to tell you one of the sea star's superpowers, which is that it can regenerate lost limbs. So if it has been, attacked by a predator or have any kind of accident and it loses one or multiple arms, it can grow them back. And sometimes you will find animals such as this one that are just mutating extra arms. So you can see this one has got these 2 extra stubby arms growing on top of 2 of its regular arms. And why not? I mean, if I had the superpower to grow extra arms, I'm pretty sure I would as well. Think how much extra work I would get done if I had 2 extra arms. But then there are many species of sea stars that naturally have more than 5 arms. And so here's one of the more common ones, the striped sunstar. Again, this comes in many, many different colors, yellow, pink, orange, but always with this bright blue stripe that goes all the way down all of its arms and meets in a disc in the middle. So this one's a pretty easy one to identify, even though it has all of these different color variations because of this bright blue stripe that is always there. One of my other favorites is this one, the rose star. I don't get to see this very often. Usually a deeper living species, but I see them once or twice a year. And I always think that the common name for this should be the snowflake star. Every one is different. So the general pattern is of pink and white in kind of concentric circular patterns. But everyone is distinct in the details, and it's also got this fantastic texture on the skin, which is, say, in my mind, makes it look a bit like a snowflake. I have 2 more species of sunstars to show you. This one is the northern sunstar. This is very common around Souk. The reason I want to show you this picture is, I don't know how well you see it on the screen, but the tips of the arms are turned upwards. And I often see this in sea stars, not just this species, but in sea stars in general. And so this gives me the opportunity to tell you that sea stars have eyes at the end of their arms. Now, they're not compound eyes like ours, but they are groups of photosensitive cells. And so they can be aware of their surroundings and changes in light and dark. And scientists have done all sorts of interesting experiments trying to move them away from their normal reef and watching them find their way back and whatnot. So whenever I see the sea stars like this with their arms curled up at the end, I always like to imagine that they're looking at me as I'm looking at them, and we're having some kind of interspecies moment together. And then the last sea star I want to show you is the sunflower star. So this one is a huge favorite of snorkelers, freedivers, scuba divers. It is the biggest sea star species in the world. So it can grow well over 1 meter across. It can have 20+ arms. It is the fastest moving sea star in the world. It can move at the incredible clip of 1 meter a minute, which doesn't sound very fast, but for a sea star, that's really quite booking it, and you really can see them sprinting across the seafloor. They are carnivorous. Like many sea star species, they invert their stomach outwards, and then they dig out clams and urchins and things like that and digest them. They're beautiful to see. They come in all of these different colors. But the sunflower star has a very sad story. So some of you may have heard of the sea star wasting disease. Around a decade or so ago, many sea star species were really decimated by this mystery disease. There was actually a research paper that came out last year, which for the first time started to identify what was causing it. It was originally thought that it was a virus. It's now been found to be a bacteria. So, we're starting to understand this. Many sea star species turned into sort of zombies in front of our eyes. The ochre stars that I showed you right at the beginning, that was very obvious because these live in the intertidal. So beachcombers were able to see them literally melting almost on the seashore. It was very, very sad. But most of these species have bounced back. The sunflower star has been very slow to come back. It's estimated that during the wasting disease over the period of a couple of years, about a decade ago, 6 billion sunflower stars died. So just pause on that number for a moment. Like 6 billion of these animals died during this die-off. So these are considered critically endangered now. There are huge tracts of the Pacific coastline where you used to find these in abundance, and they're now basically extinct. We are very lucky around Vancouver Island that we can still see these, and I see these when I snorkel. Not every time I go out, but there are places that I know that I can go, and I will fairly regularly see these. So I'm always extremely grateful to be able to see these sunflower stars, given the sad history that they've had in the last decade. Okay, now we're going to move on to nudibranchs. If you don't know what a nudibranch is yet, your life is about to be changed. A nudibranch is basically a sea slug, but that does not do justice to the majesty of this family. So nudibranchs, again, we have 30, 40 different species of nudibranchs in our cold waters. They also exist in tropical waters. And they are quite incredible in terms of the diversity of the colors, shapes, and sizes that they have. So I'm going to give you a brief tour of nudibranchs of the Pacific Northwest. Again, not a complete coverage because I would be here all night. But again, some of my favorites that just give you a taste of the order. Okay, so I'm going to start off with these two. So on the left, we have a branched dendronotid, and on the right, we have an orange peel nudibranch. So I started off with these two because they illustrate the range of sizes that nudibranchs have. So the one on the left, this branched dendronotid, I took this picture, it was on a little piece of seaweed, and it was maybe 5 millimeters. It was tiny. It was very, very difficult to photograph. So some nudibranch species are extremely small and very, very difficult to find, and even harder to photograph. On the right, this orange peel nudibranch is one of the largest species in the world, and it can grow to a foot. Okay, so everything from the teeny tiny to the really big. So the word nudibranch means naked gills, and that is one of the defining features of the nudibranch order. They have their gills on the outside of their bodies. Now, where they have their gills varies a lot from species to species. So on the right, we have the San Diego dorit. And you can see, so it's facing sort of away from us towards the kind of top left. And the lower right of the picture, you can see there's a frilly, like it's like a little frill on its bum. So that little bum frill, that's called the branchial plume. And those are the gills of this particular species. And many of these dorids, different dorid species, have the branchial plume, and that's their breathing apparatus back there on their bum. On the left, this is a diamondback tritonia, and its gills are in, I really wish I had a pointer, but I'll use my mouse. You can see, okay, so these little clumps along the side of its body here, those are the gills on the diamondback tritonia. So usually in any given species, you'll have some part of the surface that looks like a bit of a frill, and that's where the gills are located. Okay, I'm going to let you in on one of my pet peeves of snorkeling. Okay, so I'm out with my snorkel buddies, and they wave me over and they say, Sara, I found a nudibranch. Okay, great, which one? And I'll say, the yellow one. So we have several yellow nudibranchs, and almost everyone will refer to every single one of these as a sea lemon. So I'm here to tell you how to tell the difference between these three yellow nudibranchs. So that if we're ever snorkeling together, you will be able to tell me which of the three that you have found when you call me over. Okay, so we'll start off with the most common one. The most common one is the one on the right, the Monterey Dorid. So all of these three yellow nudibranchs are all kind of dome shaped, and they all have this bumpy structure on their skin. Those bumps are called tubercles. Now, in the Monterey Dorid on the right, you can see that some of those tubercles are either black or dark brown. So that's the defining feature of the Monterey Dorid. Dirty tubercles. Okay. Now let's look at the one on the lower left. This is the noble sea lemon. This is when you're allowed to say the words sea lemon. Okay, the noble sea lemon. It also has dark patches, but the dark patches are not on the tubercles. The dark patches are on the skin. Can you see how the coloration, these brown patches, is on the smooth part of the skin, not on the tubercles? Okay. Then there is the Heath Dorid, which is the least common of the three. Now, it's also got these dark freckles, but if you look closely, and it's difficult to see on the slide here, those tiny dark spots, those freckles are on the skin, and again, not on the tubercles. So you heard it here. You now know how to tell the difference between these three yellow types of nudibranch. Okay. Now I want to move on to some of the more dramatic looking nudibranchs. So the one on the left is the opalescent, also known as the longhorn nudibranch, and on the right is the golden dorona. Both of these are typically about 1 inch or 2 long. And they have these long sort of frilly growths on them. So rather than the smooth body with the little bumpy tubercles, these long frilly parts are called serrata, and they have several different functions. So the first function is it's part of their digestive tract. And so several of these nudibranch species feed on anemone tentacles, and they keep the stinging cells in their digestive tract in the serrata, so that if a predator comes along and tries to give them a little nibble, they get a mouthful of these nasty stinging cells and they get left alone. But if that isn't enough to deter the predator, they can actually shed these serrata and leave them wiggling around like a decoy whilst they slither off in the opposite direction. One of the most, I would say, important fun facts about nudibranchs is that they are hermaphroditic. So this means they have both male and female sex organs. And those sex organs are always located on the right side of the animal. So if you ever see a pair of nudibranchs, head to tail like this, so the head end is where they have these kind of horns. These are called rhinophores. That's their primary sense organ. They sniff out chemicals in the water. So you can see there's this pair. The one on the right is facing towards us, and the one on the left, it's rhinophores facing away from us. So they are right side to right side. They are getting ready for a bit of nudibranch loving. So if you see pairs, that's what they're up to. Okay, the last species I want to show you is the giant nudibranch, also called the giant dendronotid or the rainbow dendronotid. I come up to this part of the island specifically to look for these. So as the name implies, they are one of the largest species. Again, they can grow up to about a foot long. I see these a lot around, well, Maple Bay, I see them further south than here, but a lot around the Nanaimo area. I saw them today when I was snorkeling at Moorcroft. They are usually found on sandy bottoms because their favorite prey is a type of anemone called a tube-dwelling anemone, which, again, as the name implies, it burrows into a tube. And so the giant nudibranch is prowling around the sandy bottom, trying to sniff out these tube-dwelling anemones. And if it finds one, the nudibranch actually like rears up on its, I can't say hind legs, they don't have legs, but you know, it rears up on its hind quarters and pounces onto the anemone, which retracts down into its burrow, into its tube, usually like taking the nudibranch like down with it. So whenever I'm in a sort of sandy, shaly bottom, I always look for giant nudibranchs, particularly if I can see tube-dwelling anemones around, because I know there'll be the predators there as well. But sometimes I see these swimming. So they are very adept swimmers. Here's a picture of one swimming for me. I wish I had a video. I only take stills, but it's this sort of full body dance they do. They're like flamenco dancers in the water column. They're really, really quite beautiful. We have lots of different types of jellies. I'm not going to go through jellies in any detail at all. This is just one of a couple of slides that I've got. People are often a bit afraid if they see jellies in the water. We're sort of, we grow up thinking that they're dangerous and they're going to harm us. The vast majority of jellies in our waters are totally harmless. This is just a small sampling of some of them. Some of them are really tiny. So the one right in the top left, so this one, I like to call this the brain in the bell jar, but it's tiny. It's only about this big. Whereas like the sea nettle or the egg yolk jelly, they can have tentacles that are several meters long. But the one that you really just have to watch out for is the lion's mane. This is really the one that does have a bit of a nasty sting. Now, of course, we're usually dressed in wetsuits, so not much of our skin is showing, but you just have to watch out if you see one of these to stay clear of the tentacles. But sometimes we're lucky enough to get caught in these beautiful spring jelly blooms. And there is really nothing more like blue planet than swimming in something like this. I mean, really, every time I get to experience this, I feel like David Attenborough's voice in the back of my head. Because it's like swimming in jelly soup. You really can't see more than a few meters. And so this is a really very special experience. Right, I'm not going to take you through too many more species because we'd be here all night. I don't normally talk much about fish. I'm really bad at identifying fish, but I have a friend in the audience tonight who will not forgive me if I don't at least mention something about fish. So here is my one fish slide. Just to say, we have lots of species of fish. And I think people don't really appreciate not only the diversity of species, but the sheer color that can be there. So for example, this guy here, this is a rock greening, male rock greening in these incredible, vibrant red and green colors. And you would think that would be so easy to see, and yet it's very camouflaged. It likes to be amongst eelgrass, which is also bright green. So it can be tricky to see. Again, examples of very well camouflaged fish. Can you see the fish in this picture? It's here. It's a buffalo sculpin. Here's its eye. Maybe you can see it now. So it's pink, which you'd think bright pink should be easy to see, but many of our rocks are covered with this pink coralline algae, so it really blends right in. My personal favorite is this guy here, is the grunt sculpin. I don't get to see them very often, but they're so comical. They're very small, and they use their fins almost like feet. They just sort of walk along the rocks on their little side fins. They're hilarious. And then another great pleasure of swimming in our waters here is when you get to swim in these big balls of herring, for example, thousands and thousands of fish that you swim on. Again, this is just my single slide on corals. You might not realize that we have numerous coral species here. We have both soft corals and hard corals. This top left, this is a red soft coral, which is really a North Island specialty. Small octocorals, again, soft coral on the right. Pink hydrocorals, orange cup corals. So lots of color down there. That's really what I want to communicate. These weird things called tunicates, these are siphon animals. They draw water in on one side of the siphon. So for example, here, they filter it and they spit it out on the other side. They can be colonial compounds, solitary on the right, that's a sea peach. They can grow to a good 6 to 8 inches tall. And so many other good stuff. I mean, I'm not going to go on all night, I promise you, but I could because we have so many cool things. I haven't touched on mollusks and crustaceans. So I mean, the beautiful Puget Sound king crab at the top right there, feather duster worms, sea pens, and of course, everybody's favorite, the giant Pacific octopus. So when I first started snorkeling, scuba divers, they like to look down on snorkelers and they're like, you'll never see octopus. You'll never see octopus. This octopus I saw, I mean, I'm on the surface when I took this picture. It was like 3 feet below me, just hanging out. Here's another example where it was just clinging to the top of a kelp stipe, again, right at the surface. So this is to say, we can see a lot, and I think there's actually relatively few species that scuba divers have seen that I have not seen. Okay, so now you're all enthused and you're thinking, I want to do this too. But you're remembering my anecdote at the beginning of the talk about how cold the water is. And you're trying to reconcile your desire to get in the water with your desire to not be hypothermic. So I'm going to briefly now do my show and tell of what I wear to keep warm. So beware, your eyes are now going to be blinded because I just need the lights up a little bit for this. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to show you my wetsuit because this is no normal wetsuit. I started off with a 5mm surf wetsuit and it just didn't cut it. So I eventually discovered that there is a special type of wetsuit that really does keep you warm. Now, I am a total wimp in cold water, and yet this wetsuit keeps me warm, even in the winter, for a solid hour, and in the summer, indefinitely. Okay, so what is special about the wetsuit? So there are a few features. So first of all, it comes in 2 parts. So there is Farmer John / Farmer Jane, and the top part. So, so that's the first key thing. The hood is integrated. So when I used to snorkel in this surf wetsuit, I had a hood that I would, tuck into the suit. But then as soon as I got in the water, the cold water would just like flush straight in through the neck and through the zip. So there are no zips on this suit. So it's a bit like wearing a spacesuit. When I get into the water, I feel nothing. I mean, eventually, after an hour, some water works its way in, but there's no easy ingress for the water. Okay, so that's part number 1. Okay, part number 2 is the thickness. So this is 7mm thickness, so it's very thick. And because it's 2 pieces, it means that on my core, I have 14 mils. Okay, so it's very good.
Can we see too?
Final important piece is that it is made of a special kind of neoprene. So if any of you have had, I see too. Okay, let me try and show the zoom pose. Here's the top, and then a Farmer Jane at the bottom.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's made of a special kind of neoprene. So if you've had any wetsuit before, you'll be familiar with how it is on the outside. So you have your rubber, and then on the outside of the rubber, you have like a nylon or polyester fabric. And that's to stop the rubber snagging. Okay, it's to give it some strength. And most wetsuits are like that on the outside and on the inside. We call that closed cell. This wetsuit, it's close on the outside, so there's the fabric on the outside, but the inside is what we call open cell. And that means, and you're welcome to come and look at this afterwards, it is on the inside raw rubber. There's no fabric on the inside. So what this means is that when I put it on, all of the tiny bubbles that are in the rubber form like a suction with my skin. And it's estimated that it's worth an extra 2 millimeters of thickness to have this open cell. Now, the rub is that it is impossible to put this on without lubricating it. Okay? So the first time you have one of these, you need a bit of a lesson from the person that you buy it from as to how to put it on. You basically have to squirt a lubricant on the inside. It's like putting on a giant condom. You have to squirt lubricant on the inside, and then it just slips right on. So there's a bit of a knack, and the first time people do it, they think, oh, this is a bit tricky. But once you've done it a few times, it's easy peasy, and you stay really warm in these. I've put up on the slide here 2 of the main stores that stock this type of wetsuit, because it is a specialist item. So this is what freedivers and spearfishers use. So we're lucky here on the island, albeit not in Nanaimo, but in Victoria, to have this specialist freediving, snorkeling, spearfishing shop called East to West. And they have many, many, many different sizes and models of these open cell wetsuits. And then in Vancouver, you guys are actually an easy hop, skip and a jump to Vancouver from here. Diving Sports is the other place. And they also do mail order, both of these places do mail order, but I highly recommend trying it on to get a good fit. The only other piece of kit I want to show you, so okay, I wear also gloves and neoprene socks, and I have, fins. I'm not going to go through all of that with you. The only other piece of kit I want to show you is my camera. So I often get asked, what kind of camera do I have? This is my camera. So it is nothing fancy. This is a TG, Olympus TG6. It's waterproof to 15 meters. I do dive down, but I do not dive deeper than 15 meters. So I don't have to have it in the housing. Sometimes I put it in the housing if I want to mount a light on there or something. But this is basically the camera that took all of the pictures. And I am no knowledgeable photographer. I put it on the autofocus, and that's it. So Mother Nature really does all of the hard work. Sorry for the people on Zoom. Yeah, so it's just a compact camera, no external lenses. I do now have an external light, but all the pictures that you've seen here were taken in natural light, just with it. Okay. Third question. We're into the home stretch now. I won't take up too much more of your time. So you're inspired to go out. You know what you're going to see. You've got the kit. Now you just need to know where to go. It might seem easy to think about places to go snorkeling, right? We're an island surrounded by water. You can just walk in at any beach. This is true. You can go snorkeling at any beach. But the kind of animals that I've been showing you, you're not going to see those just anywhere. So if you just go to a random sandy beach, you're probably not going to see very much. So a big part of my COVID project was traveling around the island with my very patient husband, figuring out some of the cool places to go and see these critters. So in the book, I've separated, so there's like 50 odd destinations. And I separated them into 5 chapters by location, by region. So I'm just going to take you through a few of my kind of favorite places in each of the 5 regions around Vancouver Island. Okay, so first up, the Greater Victoria region. So my top 3 reasons to go snorkeling in the Victoria area. So first of all, Victoria is obviously our provincial capital, it's the biggest city on the island. We might think it would be very removed from fantastic wildlife experiences, but really we have around Victoria some of the best snorkeling on the island. And it's right there on our doorstep. I mean, I live literally walking distance to some of these spots. So, I can go to work, come home, dump my laptop, be in my wetsuit and in the ocean 10 minutes later. So to be able to do that, it's really quite special. And you folks are the same. So I'm going to talk about some of the local areas for you in just a moment. But being able to have what I call these urban ethics is one of the reasons that I think Greater Victoria is a good place to head to. In the summertime, the Saanich Inlet, which is here, so downtown Victoria is here, the ferry terminal's here, here's the Saanich Inlet. In the summertime, it's very common to see bioluminescence in the Saanich Inlet. So if you go down after dark and you go for a surface snorkel, then predictably throughout the summer, you'll get to swim in this phosphorescent soup, which if you've never done it, is really a very special experience. And then my third reason to snorkel in the Victoria region is, so down here is the Ogden Point breakwater, which is where the cruise ships come in. But on the outside of the breakwater, we have this incredible kelp forest in the summertime. And so again, to live just minutes from this blue planet experience where you've got these healthy bull kelp forests, the fish and the other creatures that live in this habitat, I think that's cool. Okay, now onto the outer west coast, so sort of Wandafuka Strait area. East Souk is an incredibly unique place to go snorkeling. It is fed by the powerful Pacific currents that are coming down the Wandafuka Strait. It's bringing in the surge of the open Pacific, and so the Souk coastline is really pounded by current, surf, and swell. So it has this very wild feel to it, and yet it's a 45-minute drive from Victoria. So again, easy access, but to this really wild place. And there are several species that really thrive in this surf, surge, battered environment. So I've already mentioned the bat stars that you really only see out sort of Banfield, Euclida, and further north from there. The green surf anemones, they love being battered. And then the one species that I haven't shown you that really loves the Souk coastline is this sea star called the rainbow star. Okay, now your neck of the woods. So between Cowichan to Comox, possibly the top reason to come to snorkel here is that in the wintertime, the visibility here can be, it feels like you can just see forever through the ocean. So today at Moorcroft, it was a lovely sunny day. It felt almost tropical. I mean, it didn't feel tropical because the water was 9 degrees, but it's just a delight. It feels like you're swimming in an aquarium. The flip side is in the summer, it is some of the warmest waters we have around our island. So if you're not quite ready to buy one of these open cell wetsuits, you could get away. Well, we see people doing it even without the wetsuit, but certainly with a surf wetsuit, the temperatures here in the Strait of Georgia, it can be 18 degrees in the summertime. I mean, I overheat in the summertime. So if you're just starting, warm water is a more pleasant way maybe to start. And then the other reason that I like to come to this East Coast is there is a fantastic wreck snorkel. So here's a picture of me snorkeling. So these are the Royston wrecks. So it's number 42, just below Courtney up there. It's a series of deliberately scuttled, I think there's like a dozen of them, different ships. And they break the surface, so you don't have to dive into them at all. And so you can swim around these rusty holes that are covered with anemones and sea stars, and that's a real joy. Next up, 4 out of 5 is the Gulf Islands. So we are very lucky to have this whole archipelago on our doorstep. And as islanders, we love to complain about BC ferries, but we are very lucky to have this network of transportation that can take us to day trips on any number of islands. So great for day tripping, really any time of the year, but maybe summer is the most appealing. And then 2 of my favorite reasons to head out to the Gulf Islands. So there are a couple of spots, so one on Pender Island, one on Saturna Island, with huge colonies of those giant plumas anemones that I showed you right at the beginning. So on Pender at Tilly Point, there's a cave that's only just below like the intertidal. So for snorkelers, it's perfect. And this whole cave is filled with giant plumas anemones. And on Saturna Island cliffside, it's as the name implies, the big cliff, and the whole cliff is covered with these anemones that you can see from the surface. So that's very lovely as well. And then if you are a nudibranch lover, on your bucket list should definitely be Peter Cove on Pender Island. So I regularly see sort of 10, 12 different species of nudibranchs when I go to Peter's Cove, including some of the rarer species. So here is the Rufus dendronotid that I've only ever seen at Peter Cove, but I go there every year and I get to see it. And then the very last section of the island is up on the North Island, so Campbell River and beyond. Many people don't get this far. I will admit that it wasn't until post-COVID that I traveled past Campbell River. I've been on the island for more than 15 years and I've never gone past Campbell River. But the snorkeling in the North Island is next level. So again, fantastic visibility in the fall and the winter. One of the main reasons I go to the North Island usually September, late August, early September, is to see this critter, which is a basket star. Now, again, scuba divers said to me, you will never see basket stars. They live really deep. Even we don't get to see basket stars. But I found several spots off of Port McNeill and Port Hardy where I find these basket stars in 3 meters of water. You can see basket stars. And possibly the reason to go to the North Island is to visit Browning Wall. So Browning Wall is famous amongst scuba divers. It was one of Jacques Cousteau's favorite, like it was in his top 10 temperate dive sites. So it's very famous amongst scuba divers, but it's great for snorkelers as well because the life goes all the way up to the surface. So it's number 50 or 51 on here, I can't remember. 50, I think. So it's on the shore of Niji Island, and it's just a sheer cliff that goes down, and the wall, so the wall goes down like 100 meters. It's just a sheer cliff going down underwater. And the whole thing is covered in rock. There is not an inch of rock that is not covered. So this does not do it justice, but this is me at the surface looking down the wall. And so you can see there the short plumose anemones, the red soft coral, there's some rockfish over here, some sponges. It's just absolutely full of life. So with that, I feel like I've kept you more than long enough. So I will wrap up and then very happily take any questions. Thank you very much.
There's a place that would rent wetsuits like this to try them out.
So I know that there is in Victoria. I don't know about around here.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to say something.
The Nanaimo dive outfitters does rent the solid.
Okay.
I don't know about, they do sell them.
They sell, okay.
Yeah, fine. Find out that then it's $30 when we go in on Saturday. They're not open Sunday, so you get to return it Monday for
There you go. Yes, sorry, I should have repeated the question for Zoom. The question was, is there anywhere where you can rent the open style suits? So yes, I know Victoria, but there were several people who had suggestions here as well.
Just wondering if you have any recommendations for snorkeling when the herring is.
The question was about seeing the herring spawn. So that's usually kicking off in early March. I think actually Stefan in his introduction was talking about Hornby Island. So a lot of people head to Hornby Island to see it. So they have a whole herring fest. So that's where I've gone before to see it. But I mean, it happens all the way down this coast.
I have one more question. So those stinging anemones, like, so if you were to touch them with your fingers, some of those big ones, would you get hurt?
Yes, the question was whether the sting on the anemones is painful to humans. It's very mild. So some people like to go and poke anemones because it makes them retract. I don't like to touch anything when I snorkel. And we have gloves on anyway, so, but the answer to your question is, some of them have this very mild sting, but it's not a painful sting. Yeah. Yes.
Sarah, super fun and super cool. We're big fans of your
Oh,
work.
thank you.
And curious, we have the guides for species identification and distribution. How do you learn all the cool facts about many of the species that you've shown us today?
Huh. I'm probably just obsessive.
Google? Like,
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
say again for the Zoom, the question was where I learned the cool facts. Yeah, I think I read things in the species guides, I Google things, I get asked questions that I don't know the answer to, and then I go and I find it out.
You can use iNaturalist if you take pictures and you upload it to iNaturalist.
Well, that's for the identification, but I think the question was sort of for learning.
jelly today, and
Lovely.
you can't find like much on these species online, and so it's kind of like
Well,
mysterious.
It is true that there are some species that are very poorly documented. And so, I mean, many of the fun facts that I've shared with you today are, well known. I mean, so, nudibranchs being hermaphroditic and this kind of thing. So yes, if you wanted to know fun facts about some of the more esoteric species, you'd probably have to hunt a bit more. But I don't have a secret source of wisdom.
Thank you.
You have a comment, Rick? No. No?
Is the wasting disease still quite active, or is it subsided still?
So the peak was definitely in these few years, about a decade ago. It's still being monitored. So for example, you mentioned iNaturalist, so there are a few places that people are still using to track the wasting disease. So I regularly upload my pictures to places like this, and I'm seeing that they're tagging them to follow this. From an anecdotal perspective, I still occasionally see sea stars in a kind of a wasting state. Whether it is the same bacteria, this I don't know. So all I can tell you, because I'm not a marine biologist, all I can tell you is that anecdotally I see it much less, but whether it's gone, I suspect not.
Is it related at all to an increase in acidity?
I don't know. And I think it's not well known. I think it was originally postulated that it was due to temperature variations, but now I think there's a bit more doubt on what caused this bacteria to boom. But as I say, I'm not a biologist, so.
Hello. Can you tell us what kind of face gear you wear? Snorkel and mask?
Face gear, just a regular like snorkel, nothing fancy, just the same that you would if you were snorkeling in a tropical location. Nothing different for the cold water.
Thank you.
It's totally new to me. First off, knowing you, when I learned that you're an astrophysicist, I'm a bit surprised that I'm quite wondering what correlation that you are snorkeling and how it correlates to the fish.
Okay, so from Zoom, the question was, what's the connection between snorkeling and astrophysics?
Astrophysics.
Stars, maybe. I think, I mean, in seriousness, I think it is a curiosity about nature, right? That, I mean, I ended up in astrophysics, but it could easily have been that I was asking questions about forests or oceans or fungi, or, I think scientists just have a generic curiosity. And so when I started out, and this sort of relates to this comment about being obsessive, I mean, I couldn't see something without wanting to know what it was. And so, I was always, documenting and writing down. And in astrophysics, it's really the same, right? We're asking questions about why the black holes are the way they are, why they live in certain galaxies and not other galaxies. And so it's just all about asking questions. Thank you, Annette.
Do you have any advice about conservation other than just
don't touch things, about not doing harm when you're in the environment.
Yeah, so I mean, that for me, that's really the main thing is I don't, so some people harvest, I don't harvest. So yeah, I really like to not touch, not take. And then really, for me, being able to have the opportunity to do these kinds of talks, because I think many people don't appreciate what is down there, right? In our local waters. And so you won't protect what you don't care about, and you can't care about if you don't know it exists. So I always think, outreach and communication is a really key part of that.
So I just have a question about the year. The open cell suits, is there any difference in buoyancy and stuff? Like, are you wearing weights when you
Yeah.
go over this?
Yeah, and if I hadn't parked quite so far away from the building, I would have brought my weight belt in to show you. So yes, it's a very good question. The question was about buoyancy in the wetsuit. So any wetsuit will make you buoyant. The thickness of the wetsuit, so the fact that it's 7 mil and there's 2 pieces to it, I am like a cork. I mean, I could not swim down if I wanted to, right? So this is lovely when you're starting out and you want to feel very safe and floaty, but at some point you want to get down. You're like, I just want to get down a few meters and have a close look at something. So that's why we wear weight belts. So it's a little bit like divers wear. So mine is a silicone belt with chunks of lead on it. If you start to wear weights, you obviously have to be very careful not to overweight, because wearing too much lead in the ocean, bad things can happen. So when you go to the dive shop to buy the lead, they can help advise you to figure out how much weight you should have.
The other question I had was just for fins. Like I have hair because I used to dive.
Yeah.
How big are the fins?
Yeah, which again, I normally bring in, but my parking space was so far away. So I started off with no fins. So the question again, sorry, on the Zoom was about fins footwear. So I started off with no fins. I was just, puttering around on the surface. But I would advise having some fins, because if you want to get from A to B, or if a bit of current picks up, having the ability to kick and move. So for a long time, I just had short plastic cheapy scuba fins. I think I got them at Costco or something. Now I have carbon fiber long mermaid fins, which I totally don't need, right? I'm not swimming super free diving down to 20, 30 meters, but they make me feel like a mermaid and makes me happy. So those are the fins I have, but it is like being turbocharged. I mean, you do a few kicks with these things and you just go. But this is usually you sort of build up to those. Yes, in the back. Okay, so the question was how long I'm holding my breath for. I hate holding my breath. I would be really happy if I could just be on the surface the whole time. But then I like to go down and have a look. So I am usually not holding my breath for more than about 30 seconds. So not long is the answer. So serious freedivers, they'll hold their breath for 2 minutes plus. But that is not me. I'm too impatient. If you want to be able to hold your breath for 2 minutes, you have to spend a lot of time on the surface, getting your heart rate down and building up to it. Whereas I'm like, this thing, I want to go down. And so I'm too impatient for this whole breathe up thing.
I think of Buster Richardson in looks.
Really just a few tens of seconds. But again, with these long fins, I mean, I could get down to 10 meters in 10 seconds, because it's like being turbocharged. I think, was there a question on Zoom? Right here? No? Okay, well then we'll go back to the room.
Have you ever tried the 15-minute tanks, air tanks?
The 15-minute air tanks, I don't know what those are.
They're air tanks that are quite small. That just last 10 to 15 minutes. So if you're stopping from snorkeling, and then you want to go down for a little more than 30 seconds.
Okay. I have never heard of these. I have never tried them.
I've heard of them, but I haven't tried them.
Okay. Maybe I'm aware that we're running quite late, so maybe I'll take 1 or 2 more questions, and I'm happy if people want to come up afterwards and have a look at the wetsuit, ask more questions. I have some books as well, if you want to buy a book. So maybe take two more questions.
Is there a place you can take like a class, an introductory class that you would recommend?
So the question is about snorkeling classes. I often get asked this. There aren't many. There is one in Victoria that I know of with Wilson's Diving. I'm not a Nanaimo local, so there may be people in the audience that can answer it here. But the reality is snorkeling is very, very accessible. Unlike
You can swim, it's good enough.
even, I mean, with these you can float. I mean, in terms of comfort, I mean, yes, you should probably be able to swim. But if you're just on the surface, once you're comfortable in the water, I mean, many of us, I'd say most of us are self-taught. Yeah. Okay, one more question.
How goes encounters with seal and sea lions?
Yeah, question about seals and sea lions. Well, it's funny you should ask that because at this time of year around here, there are lots of sea lions. And they totally freak me out because they're big animals and they are curious animals. And so today, I mean, I often have sea lion encounters here. Now, you should never approach marine mammals, but often they approach you because they're curious. So today I had a group of like 4 adults and a baby all swimming around us. And at one point I was just on the surface and one of the adults, he would sort of swim maybe like 5 meters below me. And then he turned up and he's just like a rocket to the surface, like so it can be exhilarating with sea lions, but generally they're just being curious. Seals, those are much more, I would say, chill encounters because they're curious, they come and check you out, but then they're also a little bit skittish. So I mean, I've never felt in danger, but you always have to respect encounters with wildlife, and particularly when that wildlife weighs several tons.
You stay still, or you stay still, don't do like.
Yeah, I generally, don't approach them. I don't make eye contact. I try to not seem as if I'm being aggressive. And usually they're just doing flybys and they go on. I did have it once a couple of years ago when we were in the North Island, my husband and I on our boat. I'm trying to take pictures of basket stars and these sea lions are buzzing us. And my husband's like, okay, I'll play defense, like I'll go distract the sea lions. And then at some point he comes over, he's like, okay, they're coming up and they're blowing bubbles in my face. I think we should probably get out now. So, I mean, they will let you know if you're not welcome, and then you should hightail it back to the shore. Sure. Okay, I don't know if you have any last announcements before we wrap up.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for an entertaining and educational talk. And if you're a Nature Nanaimo member and got a name tag, please turn them in as you leave. And if we could get help with putting the chairs away, there are these trolleys. Each trolley holds 8 chairs. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for coming up.
A very not traditional, I guess.
Society.
Oh, yeah.
And love and having yes.
Yes. My husband has definitely spoken to you. You can easily find me on